all-knowing and all-powerful, starting with the elderly wolf uncle. Chapter 87. The other side. When Thor heard Chen Tian's words, a surprised smile appeared on his face. Can we go along the way? That's great. Of course I do. If someone can lead the way for him, he naturally has no reason to refuse. When are you going to leave? If we can, let's go now. Thor couldn't wait. His Mjolnir is still in the wilderness, and although he is not worried that someone can steal it, he always feels uneasy when he is not around. Thor, it turns out that you came here secretly. Then, a woman's figure ran towards them. Chen Tian and Thor turned their heads at the same time when they heard the sound. Hey Jane, why are you here? We're going to get my hammer. Do you want to go together? Thor recognized the identity of the other party, Jane. Foster is the first friend he met after being banished to Earth by Odin. Simple. Foster looked at the bright smile on the handsome face on the opposite side, and had a little headache. She wondered if she was crazy enough to believe a stranger's words. This Thor actually said that he was a god from Asgard, and the hammer that fell before was his weapon. When he retrieves his weapon, he will help him retrieve what was stolen. The devil knows if he's crazy. I just want to think about it. Simple. When Foster smiled at Thor, he couldn't help but say, if you want to go to the hammer, you can tell me. I can drive you over. There is no need to run out alone. Quote. That's really bothering you. Thor scratched his head a little embarrassed when he heard the other party's words. Saying that, he pointed at Chen Tian. He also wants to go together. Huh? Simple. Foster followed Thor's hand and saw Chen Tian with a beautiful young man's face, and suddenly wondered, who is he? Didn't you say that you don't know anyone else except me? Thor and I also just met. Chen Tian knew that the woman in front of him was already fascinated by Thor after only seeing him, and after explaining, he said in a deep voice, with me. You can walk to the hammer effortlessly. Quote. Otherwise, it is estimated that it will take some effort. After all, it is now under the jurisdiction of xianxia. The purpose of his words was naturally to keep acting with Thor. And Jane. When Foster heard the words of xianxia, his eyes narrowed, his eyes flashed, and he suddenly became vigilant. She has great resistance to the organization of xianxia. After the other party came to the location of Mjolnir today, he forcibly requisitioned her equipment and meteorological research report. And she was not allowed to participate in the relevant research together. Right in Jane. Foster looked at Chen Tian in front of him, hesitating for a while. Hey, Jane, this friend is a warm person. Since he is willing to join us, he has to go together. Thor, a man with muscles on the other side, said so emphatically. Got it. Take it with you if you want. But I don't believe he can do anything with xianxia. Simple. Foster looked at Thor's stubborn and handsome face, and helplessly accepted Chen Tian's request. Subsequently, several people went to Jane together. The car driven by Foster rushed towards the drop point of Mjolnir. After a while, several people had already arrived outside the fall point. At this time, xianxia has already set up a temporary research institute consisting of white tents here. A radius of several kilometers has been fenced. You two must be careful, S.H.I.E.L.D. is not a good existence. After all, they are backed by governments around the world and have privileges in many parts of the world. Simple. Foster got out of the car, glanced at the temporary scientific research institute that was still brightly lit at the moment, and couldn't help but remind. However, let's go. Quote. Chen Tian didn't seem to take the woman's words to heart, and without turning his head, he raised his feet and walked towards the research institute in front of him. Jane, you don't have to worry too much. I feel that this Chen, a reliable guy. Thor saw this, and also followed, and turned back at the same time. I must be crazy. Jane looked at the two men who were walking farther and farther in front of her, with a headache and helpless expression. How could you sneak into the place of S.H.I.E.L.D. at night with two people who have only known each other for a day? Quote. Then, she took a deep look at Thor's robust back, and still felt that she had followed. Stop. Ahead is the place of S.H.I.E.L.D. Tell me who you are and where you are. Which thinks. Just approaching the temporary research institute of S.H.I.E.L.D. has not even entered it. There were several task force members in black uniforms, holding their guns in order to come up. Shouted at them. Damn it. Simple. Foster looked at the muzzle of the black hole on the opposite side, and was directly frightened and froze in place. His body was cold, and his heart was extremely nervous. At the same time, he couldn't help but set his eyes on Chen Tian, who was walking in the front. Didn't you say that with you, you can easily enter the research institute of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Why was it surrounded before you walked in? It's over. It seems that I really am crazy to believe the words of such people. Simple. Foster was terrified. In just 2 or 3 seconds, countless thoughts flashed quickly in the bottom of his heart. All kinds of emotions suddenly gushed out in her heart. Emotions are mixed. Simple. Foster found that Chen Tian in front of him, even though he was pointed at several guns, was still an understatement. Inexplicably, it gives people a sense of calm. Next second. Put down the guns. I don't want you to die here. A figure carrying a bow and arrow descended from the sky and landed in front of everyone. Yes, sir. Hearing the words of the other party, those members of the task force then withdrew their guns. Chen Tian squinted his eyes, looked at the figure, and recognized the identity of the other party. Hawkeye Clint Barton, the other side. Hawkeye also kept looking at Chen Tian, recalling the picture of his subordinates pointing a gun at the latter just now, and he was afraid of a cold sweat in his heart. No matter what Chen Tian's position was, the other party's terrifying strength was not finished, if those task force's members misfired and a bullet shot out. They could make the entire Temporary Research Institute, and even SHIELD, suffer heavily. So Hawkeye decisively apologized. I'm sorry, just now my team members are completely performing their daily duties, and they didn't mean anything to you at all. I hope you can understand and forgive. Quote. Hawkeye would actually apologize to this teenager. Isn't he talking big? Simple. Foster has been in contact with SHIELD, and naturally knows Hawkeye's position in it, and his heart is incredible when he sees this scene. What the hell is he about? She looked at Chen Tian, and the emotions in her heart had turned into doubts. Then, Hill, who was tall with short hair, also walked out from inside. The moment she saw Chen Tian, a trace of vigilance flashed under her eyes, and she clenched her fists and stepped forward with some nervousness in her heart. Sorry, it's not that they are powerless, but this place is currently in a special control area, and no one can enter it. After taking a deep look at the yellow-skinned boy in front of him, Hill said as smoothly as possible. The hammer in this is mine. I'm going to go in and get it. Thor was in a hurry. Pointing in the direction of the Temporary Research Institute, he loudly refuted. I'm sorry, outsiders can't go in. Hill glanced up at him, his tone indifferent, and chose to refuse without hesitation. At this moment, in the dark sky, a rolling thunder suddenly sounded, and the electric light flashed through the entire Temporary Scientific Research Institute. Just let him go in and try it. Chen Tian spoke in a deep voice. Anyway, USHIELD can't pick up that hammer, can you? First chapter, previous chapter 87, 186, next chapter, tale, table of contents.